guru on a lot of issues, including rights for individuals under guardianship. And so she just called me because she found out I was the chair, and are you the chair of the Aging Advisory Commission? Because I wrote that you were.
No, actually, I've termed off the commission now, but I remain on the housing committee, which is very active.
So I completely overinflated you on our agenda.
That's all right. You can give me a raise.
Okay. So we did distribute the draft checklist for site plan reviewers. And if you could start by just explaining how this arose, because there were some questions as to what you were trying to do with this and whether it, covered all the things we wanted. So I'll just let you take it away, starting with what is the checklist meant for?
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me and for making room on your agenda, because I know you have a lot of other things going on. And I think that just overall, it's a great idea for the Commission on Aging and the Disability Advisory Commission to work together on things. And so hopefully this will be a harbinger of things to come. And so I bring you greetings from the rest of the commission, and they were very happy to hear that I was meeting with you all tonight. So the Commission on Aging, and particularly its Housing Committee, we have a very strong committee system, and all the committees are very strong and active, and housing is pretty gung-ho about a lot of things. And one thing that they've been interested in for many years is the idea of a livability and universal design. So here, we're not talking about ADA access. We're not talking about things that are covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, or in fact, any other federal or state law. Rather, we're talking about things that are specifically not regulated so that they could be negotiated in a site plan review context. The commission's original interest in livability was as to single family homes. And in fact, we actually made a video of universal design in single family homes to illustrate concepts of aging in place. And we participated in developing guidebooks and distributing guidebooks and so on. But with the great number of multifamily residential projects going on here in Arlington, you always see a new building going up. We have a great interest in universal design in these multifamily units. And as I'm sure you know, each of these projects must go through a site plan review committee. And so our idea was, which is basically a negotiating back and forth, because the developer has to provide, monies to the housing trust fund, to the housing investment fund, or do other things for affordability. And then this is also a good place to raise awareness about some design issues, because it's very much of a negotiation. And so actually the idea of having a checklist came directly from a member of the Planning Commission. When we talked about our idea, they said, yes, we would love to have a checklist. So they sent us off, and we started working on a checklist. We knew that we didn't have the expertise to do that ourselves. And in fact, we welcome your expertise because it's greater than ours. But we did work with a certified CAP, which is a certified aging in place specialist, who knows a lot about universal design features. And she helped us to draft a pretty exhaustive checklist, which was much longer than the one that you see in front of you. And in fact, that was problematic because we inadvertently included things that were covered under the ADA or covered under some other federal or state law, and we didn't know. And so the county's inspection division came to our aid and helped us to sort out what is regulated and what is not regulated. And they gave us a big old spreadsheet. And so what,
Can I pause it for a second, Erica?
absolutely.
Courtney, is the county inspection commission or the one that came to visit us and talk about ADA compliance issues? Could you remind who it was that met with you and reviewed the checklist?
Yeah, it was Shahryar Amiri and a staff member, Todd Connors.
Yes, that was the gentleman that came.
Okay.
I think, yeah, that time.
Okay, good. All right,
Yeah.
so he reviewed the checklist and he said that some of the stuff we put in were already required by the ADA.
Exactly, exactly. So they took those all out. And so the checklist that you see in front of you is only about a third of the length that it was, and that's fine. So it's really pared down. So none of the things on the list are required. We have a section at the end for items that are required for type A, accessible units, but not for type B adaptable units. And we know that almost all, the great majority of the units are type B units. So we put that in as well. So again, we're not looking for things that are regulated. We're looking at things that would make life better for someone who is going to be living in these buildings.
Erica, we have a question, I think, related to type A and B. This
Yeah.
is Doris Ray.
Oh, of course, Doris. Hi. I've known Doris for many years, and she's a wonderful resource.
So, do I recall correctly, you brought this to us before, maybe in June or July of either last year or the year before?
Yes, Doris, your memory is excellent. And actually, I was just about to say that we went back to the Planning Commission virtually in September 2021. And they asked a number of questions, and we told them it was just a draft and that it was still evolving. And they sent us off again. And it wasn't until, so what brought about our approach to you is that we didn't know how to move this forward. And we ended up meeting with a member of the Planning Commission, Elizabeth Guerin, who has been working with site plan review committees for a long time. And we met with her, and she was very enthusiastic about the checklist and said that we should reach out to other county entities. And the first county entity that she mentioned was the Disability Advisory Commission. And that's how I came to contact Elizabeth, who I was fortunate to already know her. So it fit together very well. And we feel like you could have some great input on this project. And the Housing Committee, in fact, just met today, and they said, could you ask them, that is you, the commission, your commission, to appoint a representative to work with us on this project? So that's my ask.
Right, and that's why, the reason I asked the question at this point was because you or somebody just mentioned that many of the features and elements that are in your checklist are already required under the law, but this is for residential, right?
Multifamily residential, right?
Yeah. So the first, just to clarify that the ADA does not cover residential unless it's public housing. So since Arlington doesn't have public housing.
Right.
And so the law in play, right, is Fair Housing Act amendments, and also the state building code, which does have requirements for fully accessible type A units. And for the most part, I do believe they parallel Section 504 UFAS requirements for federally funded housing, and require a roll-in shower rather than a tub, so which would be a type B unit. But then you've added some things that are in the universal design guidelines that apply to things like appliances. So the thing that was going on in my mind was one, are you thinking, having been at site plan review, there is a section of the site plan review that is architecture and accessibility. And mostly they're covering bricks and mortar things. So would this be like a I'm looking for a voluntary technical guide to universal design and not considered a site plan convention, which is, formal requirements. So like right now, multifamily residential has a site plan convention that requires new buildings to have automatic, main entry doors and garage entry doors. So that accessibility feature, which is beyond fair housing and beyond UFAS, is something that's required. But so is your checklist something that you would like to see required, or as a technical preferred guide of some kind? Because the one thing about site plan review is they don't get into much minutia about accessibility, except things like the number of units, so they know how it fits into the building architecture. So we're going to have the 6-story building, and we're going to have 6 fully accessible type A units or something like that, but I've never seen them get into things like, kitchens and bathroom cabinets. So maybe you talk this all out with them, and so I'm thinking maybe you have some reference for us so that we know how to support it.
Right. Those are, thanks, Doris. That's a very good overview. And I do think that your comment about it's mostly the site plan review committee focuses more on the bricks and the mortar. And, ours falls more on the voluntary side. And what Elizabeth Guerin said to us is that more and more often, because the site plan review committees are getting very more and more complicated and longer, and they're trying to streamline them. And so she gave examples of how they could send various members of various advocacy organizations off site, so to speak, and say, here, you guys, you care about this, agree on it, and come back to us with an ask, and we'll consider putting that high on the radar screen for the developer. I mean, that's pretty much the idea. She also told us that, I don't know what this stands for, E2C2 or it's not Star Trek, but there is another committee. I think it has to do with the environment, and they have a checklist, so there is some precedent for the site plan review, so there is some precedent.
Eric, I have a question. So when you say that recommendations will be made and then it will go back to, you mean the two is the Housing Planning Committee? And if I have that correct, what kind of authority does the Housing Planning Committee have in Arlington?
No, I meant that, when I say go off site, I meant that, for example, if there were many livability features that you all came up with and we came up with, and we made a list, like this checklist, this is a start, is all, that if we agree, if instead of taking time in the site plan review committee itself, we could go back and say these two things, having a bench in the entryway and, having sufficient lighting in the kitchen or something like that, that these are our highest priorities. And we want the developer to be aware of those. How the site plan review committee actually folds that in, I'm not, is sort of higher than my pay grade, but that's kind of what Elizabeth Guerin told us.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. And could I ask, what authority does the Site Plan Review Committee have? Are they a county board? Are they volunteers?
Yes, no. So for each, they're a creature of the Planning Commission. So they're entirely part of the Planning Commission. And so the Planning Commission puts together a site plan review committee for each building project that's going up. For example, today in our housing committee, we were talking about the two sunrises. There's a assisted living sunrise in North Arlington and one in South Arlington, and they both, well, the one in South Arlington is getting ready to have its site plan review committee, and the one in North Arlington hasn't got to that point yet. But so the Commission on Aging has a seat on the Sunrise Site Plan Review Committee. Your commission could too, if you were interested in that. And so in that way, the Commission on Aging can raise concerns that will be part of the overall negotiating platform of the Planning Commission.
I see.
But-
That's really
but-
helpful.
So I was in the site plan review committee for
For Sunrise.
she's talking about
Lee
it.
Road.
It was actually a week and a half ago.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And Cindy, there were two members there from the Commission on Aging, Cindy and Andrea. They were both there, I believe. Anyway.
But they recommend to the planning commission. The planning commission recommends to the county board, which would be in parallel with anything we do on the site plan.
Okay.
Except
really
they staff the meetings.
And if I remember correctly, the SPRC is used for projects that are going outside of the general land use plan.
So with Sunrise North, they need to change the zoning. And so they have a GLUP, a general land use plan, and that's the phase that they're in right now. And so they can't get to the site plan review process until, if there's a GLUP needed, then they have to do that first. And then they put together a site plan review committee, and commissions that want a seat at the table, I think can probably have one. I mean, we have asked because affordable assisted living and affordable housing for older people in Arlington is very, very important to us, and we would never miss a chance to say so.
Right. So one of the things that I had talked to Erica earlier, and I'm at a disadvantage because I really don't know the housing structure in the county. But I had told her that we as a commission have been concerned that there's nobody in the county that even seems to do an adequate review for new public housing to see if it would comply with the ADA, or multifamily to see if it would comply with Fair Housing Act. And one of the things that we might jointly advocate for is who would be, or could we have somebody that would look into whether the site plan reviewers considered livability, even if it's not a requirement. Had you guys thought about that? I mean, basically enforcement, but I mean, it's voluntary, so I don't know.
The accessibility of during the site plan portion, not the land use portion, but the site plan portion of process has an agenda item specific to accessibility, but it's one of the sub-agenda items under the architecture portion, and the meetings are broken up. They used to be broken up into 3 or 4 meetings, and they got into some more of the detail without somebody advocating hard than it is now, because they consider it a more streamlined case. They're trying to get the whole thing done in 2 meetings. Am I characterizing that right, Erica?
Yes, I think so. And that goes along with what Elizabeth Guerin told us. She said that the meetings were getting longer and longer and more complex, and that they had to find a way to streamline them. And they were still working on that.
And,
So,
and
yes.
the way they structure the meetings is the people at the table representing the site plan review committees are led by the planning commission. And then they, because of modifications that were made to the process around 2016, that actually this commission advocated for, they have members of an expanded variety of commissions that are members of the site.
I see.
And then the process was just recently revised so that they know exactly who each one of them was going to be in the planning commission,
I see.
So then, in addition to that, civic associations that are the neighbors of
Oh,
whatever the process are sit at the table as well.
okay.
Okay, and sometimes some other associations, but mostly the neighbors, civic associations. So, and they sit at the table, they hear the presentations, and then they all, the way they're structuring the meetings, get a chance to ask questions. And usually the best of the chair for the site plan committees will get to everyone that's at the table. But in addition to that, really, if it's a hot topic site plan, then there'll be members of the community. In the past, they're in person now, either in person or virtual. And at the end of the meeting, they are given time to make comments. So that's why it's so critical,
Right.
the way the process works, that the commissions are there and at the table.
So one of the things I was thinking is, in addition to giving comments on the draft plan, maybe if we think we're going to get anywhere with the housing commission, maybe we can join with the aging commission in advertising or ginning up support for livability. I mean, I think a lot of people don't even know what that means, and probably think things like that are already required.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that the Commission on Aging would welcome that. I think that most people probably don't know what it means, and I think there's a great deal of outreach that could be done.
Super. So what is your time frame for getting our comments back? We only shared this with folks yesterday. So
Sure. So this is still very much a work in progress, and we would welcome, so we next meet, let me put it this way. The Housing Committee of the Commission on Aging just met today, and we will meet again June 13th. I would say if you could get us comments before June 13th, that would be great. But what would be even greater would be if you wanted to, this was just suggested today. They said, ask them for somebody to work with us and represent the DAC on concerning this project. So if you, we'd welcome any comments you have in writing or orally, or anybody that you want to send to our housing committee to help us work on this as well.
great, Brian.
Yeah, so is the Commission on Aging looking to establish a working group to sort of flesh this out more and do a more in-depth resource for developers and staff? Or are we hoping to keep this quick and get it, approved by the county board before, they gavel out for the year?
Yeah, I don't think we're looking for the degree of formality that would require county board approval. We would require planning commission approval because it would be essentially their, well, they would agree to at least expose the members of the site plan review committees to the list. So I think what we would most want would be to complete some type of reasonable checklist, or it could be just a list of questions to raise awareness for the site plan review committee. And then after that, I think there are many other audiences in the county that we could go to for outreach to expand this concept.
Excellent. I really think this is good. Does anybody here automatically know in their gut they would love to be appointed on this small group to work on this? We have members that aren't here, so if nobody says they are extremely interested right now, it doesn't mean you're out of luck.
Okay, great.
I would say that this has been a long-term goal that I was hoping to start with the new county board. So, but if someone else is more passionate about this, I can definitely. I'm okay with letting them, take the role.
I think it's great. So, Brian, why don't you give Erica your email? Maybe you guys could, or whatever. Which do you prefer, Erica? Maybe you got. How would you like to get in touch with Brian?
Email would be a good start. And do you want me? Do you want to have my email or?
I'll send my email to Courtney and she can forward it to you.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll forward it to Erica, or vice versa.
Perhaps really a start on this might be to bring it up as a topic with Matt Conte.
Who's meeting
Next
us in
month?
June?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And partly because he served on the Housing Commission and I believe he was on the Planning Commission. So.
Well, I'm not sure. I think that our meeting is June 20th with him and she wanted comments by June 13th. So maybe we could still do the comments, but then also bring it up with Matt when he visits, or did you envision getting talking to Matt about it before then?
The one thing I think that we need to be exploring as we explore this issue is something that I have seen happen recently with the opera project down, and I'm blanking on the site plan name. But it's already going forward. The opera project that's down around the two buildings here, Pierce Queen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Marabella? No,
Say that again.
Marabella? I know there was one that was approved,
There are
Marabella.
two plans. It's right, what is that called? North Fairfax. Anyway, it's down there, right near Pierce Queen, and between courthouse and Roswell.
Okay,
So, and it's a new project. They're going Alta Vista.
on the Alta Vista. That's right on top of the Boston Metro, right?
Yeah, and they're gonna take part of that land and they're gonna build two buildings and then they're gonna renovate part of the Alta Vista. So, in that project, one of the buildings is supposed to have 125 designated senior independent living.
I think that's Marbella.
It's APA. It's an APA project.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when asked during site plan review, the developers said, when asked about what they meant by senior designated units and what they meant by what kind of accessibility they were going to have, they said universal design. Because I was asking them, so how many fully accessible type A units?
Oh.
And they said it's so and so many of those, but then this 120 senior units are going to have universal design features.
Oh.
And developers use that a lot, not just here in Arlington, but also in Fairfax County, when they don't want to say what level of accessibility they're going to have. Universal features, and I've seen the results of that, not here in Fairfax County, but it feels to me kind of insidious.
Yeah. That's
So
also
that's what I
important.
think we need to be questioning.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
and
also
that's-
important information because aren't you calling the checklist universal design checklist?
Yes, so here's a chance, Doris, that's a very good observation. Thank you for that. And maybe, I mean, thinking about this, maybe this is a way to better tie down and define exactly what we might mean by universal design and livability, so it's not so slippery.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully this can be a model policy we can bring to Richmond and get written to the state code, so we don't have to be deceived by developers every time.
Yeah, I like you, Brian. You think big.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think we have some next steps. Would you like to propose any more next steps? I haven't, I mean, the only one I see right now is that we are going to comment and try to get them to you before June 13th. Whatever we comment on, we also want to discuss with Matt DeFerenti, who's our liaison. And he's coming to our meeting on June 20th. So if you're around or somebody else from the planning committee wants to also be here for then, I have to check though, because Courtney has a pretty full agenda on that day.
Yeah, that sounds like a wonderful idea, and we're flexible. Our liaison is Katie Crystal, so we're losing her, and who knows?
We need another person to champion it.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I think we decided is that Brian is gonna either through me or Courtney get you his email, maybe to talk about being a representative. However, it would be helpful.
Great. And Brian, I will see that you get invited if you can come and want to come, and you could come either virtually or in person to the Housing Committee meeting on June 13th, if you want to.
Yeah, I should be free that day, but I'll have to double check. But, excited to collaborate on this project.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great.
And just
Okay.
for the heck of it, so it gets into the notes, we can say the fourth thing we decided is that we need to look into how these developers are defining universal design.
Yeah,
Uh,
right. Okay, thank you so much. I feel very much listened to, and I think that we have a good set of steps, and I will take this back to our committee and commission, and they will be thrilled with the progress.
Well, thanks for reaching out, Erica.
Okay,
You're an
thank
amazing
you.
advocate.
Bye.
Bye.
I will mention that Takis he's been talking my ear off about universal design.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, we might have another advocate on the board for us, so.
Oh, well, we should definitely
Who is
share
this?
our thoughts to Takis.
Takis Keratonis,
He's on the board.
he's, every time I see him, he mentions universal design and private housing.
He's a,
Oh,
Yeah.
you mean in private housing or in single family?
And single family, I think he's talking about housing in general, but using, certain tools like our housing grants and the, tools that the county could use to encourage universal design throughout the county.
okay.
Yeah, but I would say that the problem that I have is that universal design is not a standard.
Yeah,
And it is not the law.
yeah,
And that it actually, some of the things that are in the handbook, that Erica brought to us
yeah,
are more specific than universal design. Universal design is really a concept.
yeah. I think it's a bad title because she has titled it universal design, but I think
Yeah.
the term visitability allows us to define it.
Well,
And
visitability has some of that, but what I was going to say is that an architect from North Carolina, Mason Rose, who had polio and used a wheelchair, he was the one who coined the concept and the phrase of universal design, and it employed more than just the built environment. It employed things. It designated concepts for things like appliances and things that are completely forgotten about
yeah,
everywhere. I mean, and for blind people, it's serious. Laundry equipment and laundromats and
That's a really good
multi-families are
point.
completely inaccessible.
I think that Erica was very glad that you brought that up because I think that's a new thought. Do you have
But-
something else to say, Brian?
I was just saying, hopefully we can use this as the process to define what that looks like
Yeah.
here in Arlington.
Yeah. Suzette, and do you guys have any thoughts? You're allowed to be quiet. Well, I just called on you and I'm sorry. That was very mean.
Oh, no, it's okay. I don't have anything else to add. I
Okay.
agree.
So I guess if we go back in the agenda, we have to see if anyone reviewed the minutes. So you looked at them, so can you make a motion for approval? Oh, I make a motion for approval. Am I allowed to? I think so. And you second it. Does anyone have any amendments to the minutes from last month, Doris? Do you have any amendments?
The minutes?
Minutes from last month?
No.
Last month. Oh, do you, Alexa?
No.
Okay. And Leo and Karen?
Nope, it looks just fine to me.
All right, so I think that means we can motion to approve them, right? Aye, all right, great. Okay. Then next after that, am I right that we go right to the The accessibility discussion?
Yeah, so the letter, the drafted letter or what?
Yes. Okay, so next on our, was the draft letter, I guess about concerns that we have that this building, though brand new, is not up to accessibility standards and certainly not up to our standards. Right?
How is that?
Does anyone have a copy of the letter?
I think this week we were gonna do bullet points.
That's
of
right.
other issues,
Yeah.
That's
and then-
right. We were going to actually just develop it. I got confused because you mentioned letters, so I didn't want to act like I was totally out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I just thought if somebody's drafted the letter, I don't want to act like I.
Oh,
No, no.
no.
I think the point was, we didn't want to have
Yeah,
an
we don't
extra.
wanna drag it out.
How is it? What does it vary with?
So,
What is the problem?
So basically, that's what we're going to discuss now. We don't have much else on the agenda, and we left this
That's what I thought.
to talk about. We had a long discussion about how we didn't want to put it into committee because then it might drag it out. But we thought that maybe we could together come up with thoughts about what really disturbs us.
Mhm.
And then, figure out the best way to get our points made. So I know, Doris, you had some thoughts about the listening devices, correct?
Well, that's not an accessibility standard.
Okay, but
And
we are.
that's what I wanted us to do. We need to divide the issue of accommodations, even if they're built in, versus the built environment.
Okay,
Because that's what's required under the ADA of an entity who's gone through renovation. So the first question is, was this a full renovation of this building? Or was it something less than what's required because this building was built in 1980s?
so
What's
the
the-
question to ask is this building, does this
Grandfathered
building
in.
have to comply with the ADA where the renovation is significant?
It was, it took a couple, it took a long time for them to
Where the
do.
renovation is significant enough to require ADA?
But do we know what, because I would like to know, is this considered substantial or not? It looks that way in the lobby, right?
Yes,
And I just found out tonight, while coming in here, I deliberately took a look because I thought, there's an accessible restroom down there in that lobby. And I asked, and the security guard took me over there to see it. And they took the accessible restrooms out in order to make the restrooms non-gender, unigender, or diversity restrooms. I forget what the security guard said. And I was
Gender
like,
non-conforming.
are you serious?
so if it's gender non-conforming, that should allow them to make it more accessible because they don't have to worry about doing men's and women's.
Well, I don't think the gender non-conforming
But
doesn't.
there's no accessibility standard for that. Clearly it can't be enforced.
That's a failure on the contractors for not to, make sure they were properly accommodating, taking into account the dimensions of an ADA restroom. I don't think that there's specific dimensions for
Yeah.
gender non-conforming. You can slap the GNC label on.
Anything, you
A
just have
porta
to
potty
make
if
sure
you
that
want
a
to.
certain
Accessibility is
percentage.
not.
But, and the
Yeah.
signage is gone, there's not accessible signage down there right now?
So the question is are there enough accessible restrooms in this building to meet ADA compliance?
And
And are
that's
they
why
actually accessible?
I think
Was
we
another
should
question
put
we had.
together a
Yes,
team
yeah, yeah.
and do a survey using the 2010 standard.
Are there enough
That-
restrooms?
I think that the major issue, that was brought up was that while they're stating to be accessible, that some of us found that some of the things they were claiming to be accessible weren't actually in the building structure, not necessarily in like a device or something added.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
So I personally came to the open house and I got stuck and I couldn't use the restroom. And I had to wait 30 minutes for somebody to see me crying before they came to my rescue, even after phone calls and trying to find the right people, right? I got stuck inside a bathroom, screaming my head off.
Which one?
The one that said it was accessible.
Okay.
The one on the first floor or this one?
This one.
This
Yeah.
one is different. This one is old. This
It
one,
has a handicap symbol on it,
Mhm.
leading me to believe that my wheelchair and I should be able to go and use
well,
that.
and
wheelchair.
that's right. I'm just saying.
And I'm not, I cannot.
Yeah, so we have to go back.
And I cannot use the first floor ones without an able-bodied person either, even though 2 of them are labeled as accessible.
So,
I can't use.
These are
so-
single stalls,
so
right?
one of the questions that
This
we have
one
to
is.
determine is, yeah, we have to determine these questions. 2 of them so are good. But I heard you say that we should do an assessment. And I'm open to that, but I'm reluctant to do that because I feel like it shouldn't be the DAC's damn responsibility to make sure that the county complies with ADA. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to repeat to Matt that there has to be somebody in the county, the
It's,
coordinator that's responsible for ensuring compliance.
wouldn't it be, and I'll put it this way. Wouldn't it be the ADA coordinator's responsibility? I mean, I remember when, what was it? It was the health department new clinic that was built, and this commission helped Anna Maynard do a survey over there. So that could be one. I mean, clearly, I don't know, how do public buildings work with code enforcement? Code enforcement lives in this building. So,
Well, the only way I could get into this meeting tonight was Christian Dorsey was actually exiting the building. And that's how I was able to get into this building tonight, was because an able-bodied person was exiting the building. Otherwise, I was stuck outside in the rain,
So
not able to get
2
into
new
the
There are no
points.
buttons.
2 new
That don't
points.
work. And the timing closes on me before I get to the button and to the door closes.
Oh, you know what, the elevator, I
can't use it.
had to press the elevator button 3 times because the elevator kept closing on me. And
Yes.
thank God it was the same elevator, because I was facing this way and it closed on me. Then I got sort of near it and it closed on me. And then, so the 3rd time, and Courtney has even witnessed that. I mean, so,
I had to ask the security guard because I'm like, okay, I've come to this building enough and tonight I'm not patient enough. And I had to get the security guard to hold the elevator door so that I could get into the elevator because there's no warning system to prepare you which elevator is going to open up. And by the time you notice that and get there, the door closes.
as a blind person, that happens to me too. And there's a dual response, and it happens probably more than you might think. And in fact, one of the things that I will say is that this is correct me if I'm wrong, Courtney, please. This is a dual responsibility issue because the county rents from JBG Smith. And JBG Smith just so happens to be the landlord for the building where our offices used to be here at 2300 Clarendon, and they went through a renovation over there. That was the first building that they put through a renovation. And it went from what was good to worse.
yeah, and it doesn't have to.
And now we're in a new building that they own. It's actually an old building, but it's newly renovated suites at 1550 Crystal Drive in Arlington. All of these buildings being about the same generation and outside the ADA new construction.
Well,
I don't
you know,
care about that.
what's
But,
interesting
but this
is
is
that
the thing.
our building.
The
was just
same thing
renovated.
with the elevators.
Well, what's
over there.
interesting is
I
that
mean,
our building was
So,
just renovated.
and
and it had-
here, I'm scared to death that I'm gonna step into an elevator shaft. Because if you look the way the lighting is, the old lighting was just wonderful. Because you could distinguish the dark and the light and the spotlights that are in the elevators. Now, when I step to an elevator, the way all the lighting is, I'm scared to death of stepping into an elevator and falling down the shaft. And I unfortunately have the memory of when out at Fairfax County Government Center, somebody.
Yeah,
So yeah, these things I'm scared to death of. I think we should do something about it. I think we should, but I just want us to get our facts right and not have somebody shoot us
Okay.
down.
and I want to agree on something. We mentioned it last time, but we were saying that we are going to raise issues that we find to inhibit our access, regardless of whether it's an ADA requirement. And
Because this building
Yes.
requires citizens to come to this building.
right,
This is the voting building, this is the taxation building, this is
Yeah.
the services building.
because this building.
But most importantly, it is a building, it's a county building that's required to be compliant with high standard ADA Title II.
Okay, so I just want to make that point because I don't want us to have to sit here and say, well, that's not ADA or even distinguish, because I don't think that's our responsibility. Otherwise, you would have gotten a different committee chair. And so, so basically, we will put in the beginning of whatever we say, the point that I just took Suzette's point because it was because I heard it, that because this building requires Arlington citizens to come to the building to perform general citizenship responsibilities. Like, that's all I got. But something like that.
And I think,
And the county meetings are held in this building, and that's not an accessible room. Like, I could not be on the board and sit where the board is because it's not accessible.
Okay, and this is neither here nor there, but I'm just curious, just
Yeah.
purely curious. Have you ever been told that your wheelchair is larger size than a standard electric wheelchair?
My wheelchair is standard issue by the Veterans Administration.
Okay.
pretty standard.
Yeah.
My wheelchair is standard issue from the Veterans Administration. I'm a disabled vet. This is what the VA gives you. I also have an 800-pound, which is not standard issue wheelchair that is bigger than this one that allows me to stand and allows me to do other things, right? But it also is not able to go into many places, so it makes it useless in so many situations.
Okay, I think I missed one. You have surgery on it.
I think,
The thing I think I missed was you're saying something about the door that you needed to ask Christian Dorsey to open it for you. So does
So-
that mean there was no push button?
So this building doesn't have push buttons that always work.
Okay.
The doors aren't clearly labeled which one the handicapped user is supposed to use or not use. There's not clear identification. There's signs on the wall that says ADA here, ADA there, but when you get to the front of the building, there's not a clear picture of which door I'm supposed to be able to use. Because we've got a spinny rotating door, and then we've got two doors on either side of the spinny rotating door.
Okay,
are we talking?
And I can't use any of those three on that side of it.
Talking about the rotating door.
Yes, that's
So,
one of the
and then
ways.
there's two doors on either side. And
Yes,
then there are the doors that are face the movie theater.
and yeah, and then there's the
third
doors,
door that faces Karen there.
and then there's the garage doors.
That has what?
There's the garage doors, the doors from the garage.
Oh, well, that I would have never seen.
and as a result of this lack of signage, you were not able to get your wheelchair through one
I
of the
thought there was
doors.
an
Is that
automatic
true?
push button.
They don't work. And the timing doesn't
Oh.
allow you that when you press the button in a wheelchair to be able to maneuver your wheelchair to get through the door before the door closes. So, and that's on the inside also, because if I go to the movie theater doors and the button's on the wall, by the time I make it, which is four doors
They
down,
aren't working like they used to. That I'll tell you, that they are not working like they used to.
Well, I think it
heard
actually might be
that
the
last
same
meeting.
company.
So-
They
Huh?
used to work, they used to work well.
so I can't get to the door that's opened up because I pressed the button in time before it closes.
It doesn't work. There's not enough time.
And it's not
Yeah.
the closest door to the button either, because you have to go by 3 doors
Wow.
before you get to the one that actually opened up.
For
And
the,
that makes no sense to me.
for the entrance behind us?
Yes, on the movie theater side.
Okay.
That's-
Wow.
So there's a button on a wall, and you go by 3 doors to get by the one that opened up. And then, in order to get to the button for the second pair of doors, you've got the door in your way.
Yeah.
And so there's no way that I can get through this second set of doors without going far away to let that door close, to then go back down the hall to get the button to go out the door.
And you know what we could also say is, even though it's not our responsibility to know what the ADA access is and all this, I know that they could do things better. So they must not have met the highest standards, because like in my building, they renovated and they put in this push button, which is the best thing since sliced bread. And it has a little handicap symbol, and if you press it, the doors stay open for so long. It's great. And all you have to do is go in there and, of course, there's Braille on the stuff, and you press it once you're in. And I was talking with somebody who's blind and said, I think this is the best thing to slice bread. And she said, it's required on all buildings because it talks to you. It says, it talks to you, and you have to go through it and put a particular number in. So that's like, I mean, and then the other thing is, we know that you can put a push button and proper signage closest to the accessible door. I mean, yeah.
So yeah, at the rotating spinny doors, if you are facing the rotating spinny doors from the outside, and there's a door on, I'm gonna say the right-hand side,
Right?
it opens out, but the push button is right where the door opens.
Okay.
So when you push the button, the door starts coming at me. But
Okay.
because there's the rotating doors, I have nowhere to go.
Right?
Are you
Right.
talking about now on the,
And so then
on
all
the
the,
movie side?
no, I'm talking about the rotating door
The
side.
plaza side.
The which side?
The plaza where they have the
The rotating
rallies.
doors.
And there's no warning to tell you which way the door is gonna come at you. And tonight I got stuck and I almost broke
I'm
the
sorry,
door.
I haven't heard the term, I still haven't clarified. Are you talking about the Clarendon side, or are you talking about the flagpole side, which is door with revolving door in the middle?
I
Yes,
have no idea where the flagpole is.
Is it the revolving door?
Yes,
Okay.
By the revolving
That's, I was just trying to clarify it
Yeah.
in my mind's eye.
so yes.
Okay. Does anyone
I get
else-
that, I get that door, that's the oldest door. And they used to use the movie theater side was renovated and was the best operating door, but the door on Clarendon hasn't been there all that long. They created that door, temporary door, that I recall. Just to give you some.
Are there other issues that you would like to, any of you would like to raise? Remember, we're not talking about ADA requirements, we're talking about access.
The lighting.
Like,
Is it
the
just
new
near the
lighting,
living
New
rooms?
high-intensity lighting,
That's even
which
a lot.
completely blinds
right, I got that down.
people with light-sensitive disabilities, like having no irises, having glaucoma, having cataracts. It makes it harder to navigate.
And I thought that you had an issue with,
Issue with sound.
the sound stuff.
Also, I noticed over here, though, I didn't get to check this out, there's the county boardroom has an installed assisted listening system. It has had it since the early 90s, since the ADA came into effect, maybe even before. So I don't know, that new TV, I think it's covering sign that says go to the county boardroom, county clerk, to get them to turn on the assisted listening system, and that's required under 504 and ADA. And then, not necessarily required, but an argument could be made. They raised the video for the county board meetings and the planning commission meetings and all, anything in that room, to a TV stand that is so high that people using wheelchairs have to crane their necks, and people who are vision impaired can't even see it anymore. It used to be installed in that alcove right across from us, and it was really a beautiful location to have it.
Okay, so as I understand it, the county board previously installed an assisted listening device. However, since the renovations, the sign saying, please turn on the assisted living device is blocked.
I've not used it yet.
Okay, what did I miss? I was trying to articulate what you said.
But I think I'm going to the Transportation Commission, so I can check for Thursday.
Okay, so you mentioned it, but you don't know whether it's a problem yet? Wait, I'm confused. I just wanted to capture what you said. I think you said that it was blocked, so people didn't know they had to turn on assisted listening devices?
No, what I'm saying is I have to check it, but we put on the way out. There's a sign there that tells you there is one in there. It's a requirement of 504.
Okay, okay.
That sign be there, since it's not a feature that's apparent, and it tells you where to go to, which is the county board office, to get the assisted listening system.
Oh, so the sign that tells you that.
Have them turn it on and give you the receiver.
Okay, so that sign is no longer visible.
Well, we should look on the way out, because I can't tell whether it's.
Oh, good point.
But it's somewhere there right behind that TV, I think. Do you know, Courtney, whether it's visible?
Okay, other issues?
The other commissioner wanted adult changing tables.
Yes, adult changing table.
What other issues? There's a library down there in that lobby now. Oh, one of the issues is how do you all feel about the big main
Adult.
desk, reception desk down there, because it doesn't have a lowered space. Without measuring, I wouldn't know whether it meets the requirement.
I've never even seen anyone in that desk.
Well, the security guards are there, but no, they would miss me in some of my wheelchairs. Some of my wheelchairs that aren't this.
Okay, so it doesn't have.
I would be lower than their visibility.
Do we have the,
The reception desk does not have.
do we note that the size of the accessible bathrooms is not?
Is this bathroom just like it's always been?
Yeah, that one's,
I haven't been in it since
yeah, that one hasn't been, is not renovated.
they didn't touch it.
Okay.
See, that's the thing that I think that's why I think we need to
How about
have
seats
somebody
at the
tell us
elevators? So
what,
that
what
as people
how
are
much
waiting.
renovation they did.
Seats outside the
Pretty
elevator.
extensive, it was like $17 million.
And also,
I think.
are there seats
looks
to
expensive.
wait
Yeah,
for people that are called
yeah.
down?
No, and that
I
was the
went
thing
here
that, like,
before
if you look
they
here, like,
made-
if you had lines, right, there's not enough seating in the public areas for the people that can't stand as they wait in lines.
It's true, there's no seating down there.
Very good point.
And even the county boardroom itself, they have like chairs cluttering where
Yes.
wheelchair users, like with like roller chairs.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I noticed like during one, during this thing, middle discussion, every time there was a huge crowd, you kind of had to be outside in the lobby.
well, isn't that the first meeting I went to in January was in that conference room downstairs?
Mhm.
And I think we couldn't fit everybody in, 'cause there were 2 wheelchairs. And that just immediately made it too crowded.
Yeah, because they were working on the elevators that
Yeah,
weren't even in compliance.
I don't even think there were chairs against the wall.
I don't think
I
they.
think it was just the
So
table.
all
I don't
they
think
need to
they
do
modified the elevators.
is
at
put a
all.
sign in there saying, please, please provide access, an accessible aisle or something. Or a table, sometimes they have tables saying, leave open for a wheelchair user.
That would have been, or take out, because I think they had a chunk, take out one of the tables. So there were more,
Right.
there was more space. It was a lot.
Okay,
2 other things that we talked about before, but I don't know if you got it down, the timing of the elevator doors.
yes, I got that.
Okay. As well as verbally letting people know which elevator.
Right, I got
Okay.
that.
The thing is that during the open house, they had tables in these aisles, right, with all the brochures. And there was no way for a wheelchair and the table and an able-bodied user to fit in that space. So I could not attend or go to any of those tables at that open house event. Because
And just so I know, was that upstairs and these?
they had them
halls or
on,
downstairs?
both. So even on the main floor, they would have a speaker in the middle of the hallway.
Mhm.
And everyone would gather around the speaker. And so there was no way for you to gain access to the bathrooms because the people were blocking everything. There was no way for you to go through anywhere because able-bodied people were taking up the whole entire space, right? It wasn't designed.
The ultimate point is,
Where is
whenever we
this?
have public events, there should be somebody watching to ensure that there's accessible aisles in both the committee rooms and the halls.
And sign language interpreter, I would also.
Where are we
Because at
talking
that
about?
event where
I'm
it was
shocked they
military
didn't.
people and it was opening up the display, which is why I was there, the military ship that's down there and this whole big presentation, but there was 3 other people before that were talking. There's no sign language interpretation at any of these events and no sign language interpreter on site to help you because there was no captioning, right? For me, who can't hear, who relies on captioning or looking at people's lips, and you're sitting in a wheelchair in a sea of people.
Not
Where are
that
we
this
talking
matters,
about?
but did they have a flyer or brochure advertising the event that said, please request sign language interpreter?
And
No,
we-
it was an open house
yeah, we got an email and there was nothing.
Where are
about it,
you
and
talking about?
Here,
at
we're
this
talking
building.
about this building. They had an open house.
At the open house, okay. I wasn't able, I had a work conflict, but
Right.
but that's why I was confused. Was it up here or are you talking about in the lobby?
It had all levels.
Hmm?
All levels that are accessible to public.
What was not at all?
The event was on all levels.
I'm sorry.
I'll review what she said. I'm just trying to
The
get
open
this
house
down.
event was held on all levels that are open to the public.
But so what is the,
So it was on the first floor, it was on the second floor, and
I
on the third
understand
floor.
that. So
Okay.
what's your point about accessibility and you were saying sign language interpreters? I mean, what?
So they had people speaking at the event, and because I'm in a wheelchair and there was no closed captioning provided and no sign language interpreter provided, it was pointless for me to be at the event.
So where
Because I
was,
couldn't see
where
their
was
lips.
the event where people were
Here.
speaking?
It was here.
Here,
In this floor?
on the
this
third floor,
there
on the
was all-
first floor,
yeah.
and on the second floor.
Yeah, there
There
were.
were people
So-
talking, there were
Yes.
presentations?
Yes, so let me explain as I understand it. On the downstairs, there was a microphone where somebody was giving presentations. So there was no flyer that allows you to request a sign language interpreter or captioning, and nobody on site that provided sign language interpreter or captioning. So that's downstairs where there was a microphone. The other issue is that all along these hallways, there were obstructions where people were providing flyers and other information that you could come and grab. Is that correct?
Yes. And then the voting people, the doors, you can't get into the voting office in a wheelchair.
Well, I'm not,
And they were
I'm
having
sticking with
their-
what I just heard. So there were obstructions.
Yes. In the
And if
hallways.
there were obstructions to what? To getting to the different tables?
So just a wheelchair could not go into the hallways at all because they set up tables
This hallway here.
in,
outside
yes.
of this.
on all levels.
I hear on all levels, but all levels aren't
Meaning-
exactly like this because the second and this floor have, you know,
Well, we're not allowed to go to the employee offices. So the ones that are open to the public.
no, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is this has, what do you call this? 2 levels, 3 levels from the, this is a open area down here that you could fall down, right? So there was only a narrow corridor up and down, but all of the levels going up aren't like that.
Okay, so
But
I'll
those
just
aren't
put on
accessible to the
first,
public.
second, and third level.
You know what I'm trying to say? I'm
Yes.
trying to say there might have been a complete floor up there, I don't know. I've only been up on 7 and 9.
Yeah, I don't think that the public event allowed anyone to go up to those levels. The public event was restricted to the
First, second, and third.
But so we need to go and look at the invitation to boards and commissions and see if it said they were going to provide interpreters or whether you needed to ask, because that is an issue. The wheelchair accessibility is one thing, but interpreters.
I was trying to
If
ask
it
this
would've-
commission to ask the county to always have one available.
You always have to request an interpreter. And
Right,
no.
that is your, wait a minute, and that is your right. But if this was a welcoming, inclusive county, then they would have provided for it anyway in an open event like that.
Right, but also, that's why I asked
So we have
about
to give the devil.
that's why I asked about the flyer advertising the event. In general, flyers have in them, if anyone would need ASL or other accommodations, please let us know. And the flyer didn't even include that.
So if it didn't have that, that's what I'm asking. I don't remember. I saw it, but I knew I couldn't do it.
It did not.
So I didn't.
I think at least I just saw an email. So I
That's what we
don't
just
know
need to
any
check,
physical
because if
flyer.
they didn't do that, it was a total violation of the ADA.
But we're
Great.
trying to collect information, so that's good.
And I
So
think,
for me, I thought our letter was not about ADA. It was about
It is not,
asking what,
but
like,
we might
for
as
me
well
to
get
come.
blatant violations out there.
Yeah, even though it's the county's responsibility to understand ADA, it's our purview to call it out when they don't follow it.
Right.
and I think that the purpose of this letter was mainly to say these were things members of the committee had experienced. So it's not a letter in which we are digging into different policies. We're
But
just
part
trying
of our charter is to advise the county board on the ADA.
And-
If you look at it, and actually we can cite that, because that's the power that we have for the county board, right? Is to advise the county board
Members
on ADA. Yeah, it's in the charter.
I think you're right, Doris. From what Libby Garvey's office sent me when I was doing orientation. When I was doing orientation, I got a copy of it from Libby's office. I'm not sure if it's what's officially on file.
But as a commission, do we want to ask the county for certain events that you might get a last minute, like an open house for the county? You might get it like the last minute and know about it from a neighbor the last minute, that they should automatically be inclusive in those realms,
Absolutely,
right?
it's
And that's what my point is about that
Yes.
event. It was not an inclusive event, and it was an open house.
For Title II entities.
And
Okay,
that's
so,
where my issue is.
Does anyone have any other points that they want to make? Otherwise, I'm gonna review the points that I heard.
The last point I would make is what we heard last month was with the elections individual who came, they're not allowed to leave their doors open, and to the point that you made, you can't open it because there aren't any wheelchair accessible buttons. But they're also not allowed to leave their doors open, so you have to have an able-bodied individual open doors throughout the building before you do as
So
well.
you can't prop doors, but to get to the voting area, there are no push buttons?
Correct, because they specific to, I think what Tate
Like a
said,
security.
specific to, yeah, it was a security issue for the election staff.
And we're
considering-
certain that the doors going up to the voting area do not have push buttons.
Yeah, I
Yeah, but
can
they're
walk
not allowed,
down
but
and-
they're also weighted in such a way and designed that a wheelchair user can't open the door without assistance, even without a push button.
And she actually noted that herself last
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
And I-
That's why-
Yes,
Like, I don't care about the push button, but you gotta weight the door and design it in such a way that my wheelchair and the door opening can all
Yeah.
happen.
And it's very easy to change the weight on a door. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So,
The number of times I
Good
get
point.
told that the wind would catch the door, so they can't.
yeah, excellent. I mean, there's an ADA requirement and there's what we experience. Okay, so, excellent point.
Mhm.
And we have so many great points. This is terrific. And we're gonna write them all up before Matt gets here. We're gonna hand it to him, ask him to be our advocate. And then we are going to, tell him that we're going to submit it to the county. Should I submit it to the county board before our next meeting? I don't know. What do you guys think?
So the county board will probably have a recess meeting that week, because I think our schedule, we meet the third Tuesday of the month.
Yeah,
correct?
June 20th.
Yeah, so that'll be a recess meeting for the county board.
What does that mean?
So they have their Saturday meeting, it's like the beginning, and then they like come back on Tuesday. So they'll have time to review it before, Matt will have it.
Can
Never
we
mind.
ask for
So
seating
you
by the
can't see it,
downstairs?
an item has to
First
be on
level
the
bathrooms.
agenda, on the Saturday before, when the meeting begins, because the
Well-
Tuesday meeting is a continuation of items on the Saturday meeting.
So,
And-
question,
and-
are
and-
we
and-
asking,
yeah.
are we
And
asking?
there's no public comment. Public comment is at 8:30 in the morning on Saturday.
So this is just a question for everybody's input. Are we asking for public comment availability to raise these issues? Are we just sharing it with Matt, or are we sharing it with the full county board? Those are three different questions I'd like input on.
I think we should share it with the full county board.
Anybody else opposed to that?
Should you?
I would go to Matt first.
I was just gonna say that.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
that's
feel
him.
When are you
Thank
sending,
you.
when are you
And not
sending
step
this
on
letter?
them.
Yes.
More than one person is talking, and it's very hard for somebody who's using this.
it's hard for me to hear as well, Doris, actually.
Yeah, so, what I asked was, well, first, we have to identify how this will be developed. I'm going to develop a very simple letter with bulleted issues. And the beginning would say why we are raising these issues and how we discovered them. And then I would bullet the issues. And then at the bottom, I would say, if we had just addressed it to Matt, I would say, how do you recommend our getting appropriate attention and fixes? Something like that. That's all I was planning to do. And then I would send that out to you guys before June 20th. And so the question I had was, should the letter just go to Matt? And I feel like 3 people in this room said, give Matt the first chance to look at it. So Did I hear wrong? Does anyone else want to say anything?
But that it be
You're gonna
addressed.
send it out to us first.
Right, yes, absolutely.
And just to make sure, are we, I'm wondering why we not even express the fact that we are concerned that following the renovation, this is still about the building, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, of the building, we have a number of concerns, some of which may be in the purview of the county, some of which may be in the purview of the landlord, like the timing on the elevator. But that we feel that since there's been a significant renovation of the main county building, that perhaps there should be an ADA survey done, and that the Disability Commission would like to have some purview or input over that, and that the county provide, the staffing for that.
okay, so, so that is one request which we'll make, if I heard you correctly, following the renovations, which we believe were significant enough to trigger ADA responsibilities, we think that the county should allocate for an ADA survey to be done. But another point we have to make is that we're aware that some of our items requested are not required by the ADA, but we feel that they are important to, and then our comments about citizens have to come to this building and be able to do certain things. So I'm willing to say we'd like an ADA survey to be done, but I don't want that to be at the expense of, I don't want them to come back and say, we looked at all your things, you're losers, we don't have to do this, goodbye. But is everybody in agreement that we'll ask for both things, or should we?
I don't know what an ADA survey would accomplish or understand that process, because it was already done from all the communications that I've had with county employees, right? That the two county employees that are in charge have reviewed the plan, reviewed the building, and said that they met every requirement by law.
As we understand it, following the renovations, did a survey determine that. We question
When used, they were not actually accessible.
I'm sorry?
Just flagging that when used, it wasn't actually accessible despite a potential survey they may have already done.
So what we're doing, Doris, is we're throwing it back to them, saying, you had people that told you they surveyed for the ADA, and we question that.
Oh,
So,
and remember that when I say the ADA, I don't just mean an issue of physical, I mean all the physical stuff, but I mean more than that. I mean things like failing to ensure that people can get all auxiliary aid and services for public events.
right.
So.
Okay, so I think we're consistent with that. I think we've incorporated that concern. Because that has a point.
I was wondering for the main floor bathrooms, since that is a very common public area, whether or not providing seating by those bathrooms for either the people that are waiting for other people or whatever, if that would be a good ask, because that's what I noticed is that when you had people waiting or the bunches of bathrooms, that the other people, like the elderly person or this other person, had nowhere to sit down and like had to be escorted very far away from their family member in order for the other family member to use the bathroom during this open house. And that was a big issue of finding places for senior citizens or other people that can walk but need to sit down on
Okay,
occasion.
I've already got that one.
Okay,
So I think, hearing no other points, I think that it's time for me to review the ones I have. Okay. So I already mentioned the reasons that you mentioned for why we are providing these comments and that why it's important for this building in particular to be fully approachable and accessible by individuals. Okay, so then we have to check, are there enough ADA accessible bathrooms to meet requirements? And that we have experienced that the bathrooms were not designed to fit a standard issue, a veteran standard issue wheelchair, electric wheelchair. And so I could leave it at that, or say you're trapped, I'll think about that. That the elevators are too quick for, and it has been experienced by both individuals of our committee who use walkers, as well as individuals in electric wheelchairs that were not able to access the elevator before it closed. Like that.
I think even manual wheelchair use.
And manual chairs. All right, good. Any thoughts on that, Doris?
When I was downstairs, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm up here. There used to be a green and a red light, but something about the lighting environment or whatever, because there are, 6 elevators?
Yeah.
Yeah, that, this relates to the timing of the closure of the elevators, but it also, there is supposed to be a visible light that goes along with the sounding bell to tell you up, down.
All right.
And it's either harder to see, but tonight I couldn't see it. I haven't tried it up here yet. Last time I went out of this 3rd floor, I thought it was visible. But what I will tell you is that I know JBG, and over there in our building at 1550, 8, 9, 10 elevators, the elevator lobby, and it takes 5 minutes to figure out which elevator is opening.
I'm sorry to ask this,
It's awful.
Courtney, but could you possibly go and
You get
see?
JBG.
It looks like there's a
there.
light over the elevator, that, something like,
Yeah, I see the up and down arrow from
Yeah, there's
here.
up and down arrow, but I think, I know Doris has expressed concern because there's like a lighting that kind of frames the door.
Yeah.
I think that's the one, but yeah, I can
Well,
double
it's
check.
dark out there and it's dark here,
Yeah,
and then there are places that are overlighted, like putting this stuff
Right.
in. They didn't know. I wonder, this is what is in our office in Crystal City, which was renovated by then. It's
Right.
what it was in our office, 2300, before we left there. It's just,
so I'm making 2 separate points. The other point, while Courtney is checking, is that there's bad lighting, without the contrast necessity, high intensity lighting that doesn't have the contrast necessary for most individuals with vision disability.
Yeah.
All right, so, but I was gonna make the separate point about the elevator lights, if we'll see.
And there's no verbal cues of the elevators. It doesn't tell you you're on floor
Yeah.
3. It
No
doesn't tell you
verbal
you're on
cues.
floor 1. It doesn't tell you
Oh, I
if
I
the
thought it
elevator's
said
going
floor-
up.
it said
doesn't
4-3
say-
when I got out.
Not for hearing and not loud enough. And
Oh.
it doesn't say elevator going up or it doesn't say elevator going down. Also
I just
verbal
said it right now,
yeah,
elevator
but
going up
prior
and it
to
has a
this, you
red
could
triangle.
tell.
Yeah.
And it's also dark on, as you go up.
Yeah,
The elevator lobby used to have some lighting that was consistent with the whole lighting scheme here and in other places, I might add, where they're using lighting. The whole lighting scheme is off. It's not a steady.
Yeah, I noticed like the lights are just off in the elevator bay. I wonder if that's like a night mode thing, or is it like down to
Well, and
daytime
then they
too?
put the arch of lights like they do
Yeah,
in bathrooms now, which makes it harder to see the inside lights of the elevator.
yeah,
That's why I was telling you the inside, because the arch of lights is outside of the elevator, and the elevator car itself is darker with
Okay.
the regular incandescent. It makes you afraid to step in because you think you're
Got
stepping
it.
into
So with the elevator point, on the elevator being too quick, I'm also gonna say there's bad lighting in the elevator. And leave it at that, because there are
But you
other
got it,
things.
the bright lighting and the bad contrast of light
Yeah.
and dark had no consistency.
The high intensity
Lighting
lighting
areas.
that provides no contrast, makes it hard for individuals with vision issues to navigate.
You can tell them it's unbleached.
Okay, yeah.
It is.
I know it all.
It's no class.
Alexa agrees. Okay, the next point is the county board has an assisted living device, but the sign is no longer visible, indicating that assisted living devices are available.
Listening, I think. Yeah, I'm gonna follow up with our.
Okay, because
Living or listening?
I saying listening device.
Okay.
So maybe I should take that one out until we check on that?
I'll check on that one, because I thought I saw a sign there and I don't see it, so I'm gonna follow up with the person who.
Okay, I'm putting, Courtney follows up. All right, no clear identification of which front door is accessible, and the timing is too short. Also, the door that is accessible is not the door closest to the push button for access. I mean, that's the point.
And they're
Okay.
not always working. They turn them off.
They turn them off at night?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't mean, did they really? Oh, and then.
wait, they turn, sorry,
They
like that
push
for a
it.
minute, what lights?
They turn off the push buttons. So like, when people, like, the one on the movie theater side, they turn it off, right? Like,
Yeah.
and don't want it to work.
Cause it goes into night mode.
I wonder if that is an energy saving thing
Yeah.
they put into the building.
But
Yeah,
if you have commissions after hours,
Right.
you know.
I-
Because that would make sense for the lighting in the hallway and the buttons.
yeah,
Not saying it's right, but it makes sense why it's all at the same time.
yeah,
Okay, the next point is, the accessible doors are configured in such a way that it makes it difficult for individuals and wheelchairs that move slow to get through. And like, is that, it's not just people that move slow, but just.
I think it's just wheelchairs. 'Cause even if you were in a manual one, it sounds like the time it would take you to then wheel to the door, it
Yeah.
would start.
It's a huge issue for people, for me, because I back up really slowly. Doors are always closing up. But your point is the doors are configured in such a way that it makes it unnecessarily difficult.
Yeah, because the location of buttons or the way the doors open or the space to move your wheelchair out of the way of the door doesn't allow wheelchairs to use the space, right?
So
Like the
you have
door
to
blocks the
maneuver
button,
around the door,
yeah.
right?
but you can't because there's obstacles.
I have a quick question,
Yeah.
and this is for Courtney. Could, on our June meeting, could we potentially do like a field trip around the building and still meet like our oil laws?
I'm not sure the connection on Hoyle, but I mean, you can
Well,
have the
because
meeting
we'll
the way-
be, yeah, we'll be away from the cameras, so.
Oh, I didn't even think about that.
Or you could bring your
I
laptop.
can, yeah, that's
Okay.
fine, yeah,
Okay.
I think however you want to, but yeah, I have my phone and my laptop.
Yeah, I'm just saying in addition
Yeah.
to the letter, I think if everyone's in agreement, it might be beneficial for us to, take Matt on a tour of
Yeah,
the issues.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah.
I can put that in the letter saying we would be,
We might want to put a remark in there that says, some of these issues could be taken care of
Easily.
with not much trouble, right? And maybe even not much expense. And that there are examples of this, and I'm going to give an example. The example is at City Hall in the city of Alexandria. They have limited space and they have 2 doors you have to go through to get into the main door. The first one is into the outside. The second is a set of glass doors that actually get you into the lobby. And the vestibule is kind of like a narrow rectangle, right? And they took care of it by the positioning of the buttons. And in fact, though, it's pretty clever because the reason they needed to do it that way is if the one was opening into the vestibule and got you into the lobby, it could get in the way of the lobby door opening. So you press one, you go through, and right next to the door, there's a second button, and you press to go in the glass door.
Okay, that's a really good point that I was not intending to put indoors, but I'll put it in. That many of the issues we've requested can be fixed easily without much expense.
It would be cheaper than the
Without much
alternative.
trouble and perhaps without much expense, because that's one of the tests
And,
for whether it's
right, a
an issue
reasonable
they should
accommodation.
be addressing.
I'll also put at the end, we are happy to advise on some options we know of that would,
Some public buildings that we know of.
Yeah. go ahead, Suzette.
Even historic buildings, so that Alexandria City Hall is a historic building.
Okay, go ahead, Suzette.
I would like to ask for increased signage internally where the ADA bathrooms are, like at the elevator or other main, because I didn't know that there was an ADA accessible bathroom on the main level, and nor did any employee. They all sent me to this 3rd floor one where I got stuck.
And I'll tell
And
you-
there's no sign outside of the bathroom area that there is an accessible one inside
there
that
was.
area.
There was, before this renovation, there was.
Bathrooms
So we
are
ought to
accessible.
blast them for this, because I was downstairs checking that one out, right, I told you. And I checked out the sign,
They pour.
and the sign is all JBG office building signs. They're using, number one, there's no pictorial on them, which bathroom signs have to have. And the way, where it's located on the wall, it's located out of where the 3 or 4, sets of things they're building. And although it is raised letter and it is braille, it is not reverse polarity.
Okay,
It's not white letters on a black or a navy background. It's the standard thing that JBG gets no matter what you say to them. Except we had to push them here at 23. But they always do the positive image. And it is legal.
Yeah.
But it's not the preferred image.
okay, so I'll put, not a preferred sign.
Because there was this big old sign and I didn't eat right next to the alcove where these new restrooms are. I couldn't even tell what sex, because there is no sex. See, because of that, you didn't know where to go. And that's not, they're making that up. Unless somebody knows about some standards that are out for, do you know? Anybody know? You know what I'm saying? There aren't standards for accessible signage for restrooms that aren't designated, either designated by gender or with the designated. I mean, I don't even know when they're using the accessibility sign.
Okay, so I've got that again. we're gonna
I just tried to
table
think
assisted
why.
listening device. Courtney's gonna look at that. No, we've got the front door issue. I added that they turn off push buttons, in the evening when commissions are still meeting. We've got that the doors are configured in such a way that it's difficult for wheelchair users to navigate. We put in a request for adult changing tables. The reception desk does not have a lowered section for convenience of wheelchair users. We request seating in public areas for individuals who are waiting in lines or waiting for county staff. Okay.
Are
There,
there displays with alternative format?
displays with alternative formats.
Why not?
Okay. No signs in boardrooms and other meeting areas requesting that, well, I was gonna say requesting that a spaces become available for wheelchair users. That might be a little bit too specific. So what we were thinking was signs on the tables designating providing wheelchair seating.
I feel like a solution, and correct me if I'm wrong, is just ensuring that the rooms can be used by people in wheelchairs. It doesn't have to be signage, but
Okay. So,
That room is ADA compliant. And that's the difference, right? Like,
yeah.
talking to them, like, they only need this width. And that's what they're required, and so they meet that width. But in reality,
Yeah.
it's not enough, right? But that's the whole issue of ADA versus how you actually make it
Yeah.
functional, right?
so how did
Because
you state it? You said, it's
Um,
not an issue of signage, it's more,
It's more actually it being accessible to individuals with wheelchairs.
no attempt to, the reality, many of the meeting rooms are not accessible to people with disabilities.
You could use the example of in January when we had 2 members with wheelchairs, we all hardly fit in that room comfortably because there wasn't space. There were too many chairs.
Okay, so I said, as a result, wheelchair users at a previous meeting had to stay outside the door.
Or I think it was like they were just backed up against the television. It
Yeah,
was just very,
and that's the only
Yeah.
room down there.
yeah.
So like if there's an elevator issue, like let's say, God forbid, all 4 elevators are out of order, then we would be forced to that small conference room.
But it's also like this table. This table is not an accessible table. I can't use this table. I cannot pull my wheelchair up to this table and function. I have to lean forward. I have to lean back. I have to
So
pull my
some of the
wheelchair up
things
to
that
the
we
side.
request are tables that can be adapted. Some of the issues that can be addressed are tables that are different heights to adapt for different wheelchairs, and perhaps clear signs indicating that wheelchair seating is available. Something like that. Okay. All right.
I'd like to add something that is not necessarily related to the renovation.
Okay.
Okay, which is, I would like to ask them if the accessible podium in the county boardroom still operates and is available to speakers.
Okay, I'll put that under during special, right? I have during special events, please attempt to ensure there are accessible aisles. That was not the case at the recent open house. In addition, there was no captioning or sign language interpreter, and the flyer advertising the event did not mention that you could request a sign language interpreter. So on that, also you wanted to say something about the microphones?
And wait a minute, and other accommodations, because that
and other
requirement,
accommodations.
that requirement is right
Or
there
other
in the Title II
accommodations.
regulations, and they give you the wording for it.
Okay.
It's down to that minutia.
Okay, I'll look up the minutia of the words.
And then, but then I asked about the podium because this is.
Was the podium
The
accessible?
podium was accessible, but I haven't seen it used. And
We are not sure that the accessible podium was made
there
available
was a raising
during
in the
the
lower
open house. Okay, got it. Then go ahead.
The last thing I would like, and I know it's not an ADA requirement, but I know I have missed commission meetings, is that if my wheelchair is not fully charged, that I can't charge it, and other people can't charge their O2 equipment or other medical devices
There is
during
a charging
O2.
station for electric vehicles in the garage. Is that?
No, I'm talking about my wheelchair.
I know, but I was saying, is that, so, well, don't you charge using an electrical outlet?
It's over there. The cord would not allow, I would have to sit next to that outlet.
Okay.
But if you had an oxygen device and the battery happened, right, like you don't have those kinds of accessibility issues where lots of times you can be at conference rooms and they'll have USB charging ports or, things to charge your phones. But they
So I guess
don't
where
think
we
about-
suggested that they have, some of these issues can be addressed by tables that are at different heights to adapt for different wheelchairs. We could also say, and tables with plugs for individuals who need to charge assistive technology.
I know this is kind of strange, but in my school, in high school, when I went to Wakefield, there were labs in school, and pretty much every classroom had a plug that you could plug in your thing from the floor, and it would just be next to your desk, so you could actually do that.
That's what I'm saying. So tables at different heights and tables with plugs for individuals who need to charge assistive technology.
Yeah, so this has one, but I couldn't reach it, right?
Oh.
Like, because they put the tables on top of it, like, you can't reach the plug, right? And that's what I've noticed, is all these rooms are set up where
There's a plug, but it's.
mobility impaired people can't use the features of the room the way the rooms are designed for only able-bodied people.
Okay. Well, then I can't say and plugs in the tables for individuals who need to charge a system. I can just say the room setup is not friendly.
And that goes with the comment I was making, is it may be ADA accessible, but it's not thoughtfully
Right.
laid out
right.
or put together.
What is this now?
Still talking about the plugging in and charging of assistive technologies and the way the room is laid out.
Although there are plugs
So
in the
I have
tables
missed meetings
and
because
around
my
the
wheelchair would not have enough charge to get me to the meeting
arm
and
pushed
home.
down.
But if I was
They were
able
not
to
able
charge during the meeting, I could have come in person to this
avail
meeting.
themselves.
And there's no way in this room for me to charge my wheelchair and attend this meeting without being away from the table or being somewhere else. And so that's the part that I'm asking is.
Okay, I just said,
Well,
our
that's
members
not-
found that they were
yeah.
not able to avail themselves of the tables with charges or the charges around the meeting room.
Yeah, there's one thing that I was hoping that we could add that I forgot. I said there was two things. One was the podium and the boardroom, but the other one is this. This has come up before. We've asked them about it. And they pushed it aside. I think we should ask them, what is the status of having evacuation chairs in the county building in 2100 Clarendon and any of the other county buildings when the elevators go down, in case they can't be fixed by the EMTs
Right?
when they come, because this happened actually at least 2 or 3 times to me and Rosemary Ciotti.
So you were in the
When we
building
were in
and the
meetings
rail,
up here at night.
and the elevators were locked. Is that what it was? Or just not working?
And we called for evacuation chairs at that time. At least asked if they had.
Our members found that after commission meetings, they went to use the elevator and the elevators were locked. They had to call for evacuation chairs and the request was never responded to. Okay, so something like our members found that after late night commission meetings, they went to use the elevator and the elevators were locked. They had to call for evacuation chairs and the response was never, was there ever a response?
Yeah, we were up here and we were up here for more than an hour.
So they had to call for evacuation chairs and we're up here for an hour waiting for the evacuation chairs. That it that's horrible. They had to wait an hour for the evacuation chairs to arrive, for the elevators to be turned back on. After an hour, were the elevators turned back on, or they just provided the evacuation chairs?
Excuse me?
After an hour, was it that the elevator was
They
turned back
finally,
on?
they, and it's actually, it wasn't like a fire or anything, it was power down. And eventually the fire department
Oh,
did what they
okay.
do, which is release the elevators for somebody.
Okay, so after our commission meeting, the elevator was out of service due to a power outage. And we called for evacuation chairs and it took over an hour for it.
But this was some time ago, but I'm just asking if it were to happen again. We were actually here for a housing commission meeting and it ended at 10 and we were down here until.
Okay, so basically the question is, does the building hold regular fire drills, including the use of evacuation chairs?
To get people out, yeah, did they ever purchase evacuation chairs to get people out, since there have been some instances, at least two that I'm aware of, that where commissioners could not get out,
requested evacuation chairs.
let alone the public.
Over an hour. Better to make it available. Does this building have regular fire drills, which include the availability of evacuation chairs and training on their use? Something like that. Okay,
Elizabeth.
yeah, it's 9 o'clock, right?
Oh, no worries. Just wanted to follow up. I'll check on the ASL interpreter for the event because the coordinator of that event had reached out to me
Yep.
to schedule, so I'll follow up to see what happened with that. Because they did contact me to schedule that, and I'm not sure what happened. So I'll get back to you guys on that.
Okay, well, they didn't work very hard.
And speaking of the translators, I know at county board meetings, they can request one, or they usually have one on standby for Spanish
Uh-huh.
translators. Does that also apply to ASL?
I don't think they are required to, but if you want to request that.
I think it would be valid to request it, even if they have like that setup where it's like a remote translator and they have it set up on like the Microsoft, that TV screen that they have.
Or even closed captioning, right? Because we have technology as bad as
Not
this one
everybody
is.
uses captioning. And vice
True,
versa.
but it still makes it more accessible than it is already.
Yeah, I know
Nothing's
they,
going
What
to
do you
be
mean?
perfect.
They had captioning.
they
No.
have captioning for some, the issue is that I don't think the AV people turn it on all the time. And they'll notice like halfway through a meeting and like turn it on. Unless you're on YouTube and rely on like the YouTube auto translator, captioner, which
Ask
would
the
be.
county board to make available ASL interpreters
Or it should be on that sign with me.
or captioning.
And make sure,
Just because there's closed captioning and open.
Because even this meeting always has like closed captioning on.
Mhm.
Oh, so we
As an
don't need to
accommodation.
request that because it has closed captioning available.
No, I'm saying, but it always hasn't been turned on, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's the thing,
Well,
like
but
getting
if
the
you
county the
requested it
policy.
to turn, I mean, there's some requirement that if somebody wants captioning, they can request that the captioning be turned on. I mean, my gosh.
Well, it's not so much captioning as, I mean, we have had a member of this commission who used CART. And she was a member of other commissions as well, and she used CART, so it wasn't on the screen here, it was at her.
Well, my goodness. Okay. Well, that leads to another point. The DAC was required to meet in this building despite the fact that construction made movement difficult. These kinds of issues need to be considered in advance. Like that? Or do you
Yes.
want me to leave out that fact? Did you say something, Leo? Or Alexa?
I said yes.
Okay. The doors going to the voting area do not have push buttons, and the doors cannot be propped open for security reasons. The doors are also very heavy. And then, explaining again why these things should be taken into consideration. Following the renovation, we understand that the county did an ADA survey and determined that it was in full compliance. This has not been our experience with the bathrooms. Okay. And with the bathrooms and the lighting, did you say?
I'd say with a lot of portions of the building. Or several.
Okay, and then, we would just, and then in our closing, we would request, our requests are that Matt help us to address these issues. Is that an okay request, or should we make other requests?
And whether or not there should be
Help
a,
us to address these issues, many of which are readily.
I just realized something that's not accessible, and I didn't. The kiosk in the lobby that provide information to the public about Metro Bus and Arlington Art Bus service are not accessible.
The kiosk.
It's not accessible,
with
and it
provided
gives a lot of
information on
information
bus
that is
availability.
helpful for transit users and certainly blind people.
Is not accessible for people who are blind. Does the kiosk also provide information about, like, I know there's a kiosk outside the elevator doors which provides information about what rooms commissioners are meeting in. Should that kiosk have like a button?
I'm talking about they have a next bus.
Yeah, I know about
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm talking about, the next bus.
But would that be the same for kiosks providing information about meeting rooms, or does that have a push button?
No, I was talking about the ones in the lobby. I have no idea. I have no use for kiosks. Like, because
All
they're
right.
all visual.
So the one in the lobby, it
But
tells
there's
you the,
written information.
It tells you.
it tells you both. It gives you the transportation,
Yeah.
like Metro, the bus, Star, and all that, well, not Star, but the other items, and then also to show you the meeting room, the commission for the week.
So have you seen kiosks that you press a button and it says it out loud? How do kiosks, how
No,
are,
it's scrolling. Scrolling.
well, I'm just asking, how are those usually made accessible? I mean, not that we have to know, but have you ever seen any that are accessible?
Don't they usually have like a, I know some kiosks have like this plug-in for headphones and like has braille.
No, they need to be speech, they're real time.
Oh.
Real time scrolling, so that it needs to be speech.
Oh, since it's
output.
real-time scrolling, there should be a speech option.
Do we
Okay,
know of any transit
Right.
system that has that type of functionality? Just so we can have like a
Because
model.
it keeps
The
track of
$1 million
the time.
bus stop
It
that
has a
got
clock
changed.
because it's real-time. It needs to have an option.
It talked,
Oh, really?
it did.
Okay.
It doesn't anymore, but it did.
Okay, so I said the kiosk in the lobby, which provides
And worst
real-time
of all, it's
information on
LED.
transit options,
I mean, LCD, not LED.
needs to have an option for speech. Because it is in real time.
For equity, they need to have.
For
There needs to be speech out.
For equity to people with vision impairment.
Well, I say we have a great letter.
All right, we have a head. Thank you for picking out this and Courtney, is it okay that we waive committee reports?
Oh, that's fine, yeah, up to you.
All right, we're waiving committee reports and I'm making a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Alrighty. Right,
So
everybody.
friendly reminder, we'll be meeting in 216 moving forward, which is right, no, I'm sorry, it's on the second floor, on the first floor.
Mhm.
The second floor.
Why is that? Is that a more accessible room?
Yeah, so at that time, that was the only one that had the hearing loop.
Oh.
And looking at it, the layout is a lot better, and Doris had provided some feedback that the sound is better in that room as well.
Great.
Is there a bathroom on that floor?
Yes, but I will get that looked at before our meeting. Actually, today, I'll go down there right now and look at it.
Well, thanks, Courtney. I know we've sent you
No
back and
problem.
forth and back and
No,
forth all
no,
night.
I'm just, yeah, glad.
And I'm sure this letter will be a
Thank
great
you, Alexa.
conversation.